it's like lunchtime. We'll be hungry by then. So we're good.
Yeah, sure.
All right, yeah, close them on the way out if you would.
I think we're ready.
I'll put my phone up here.
You're going to be on. You're going to be on. He turned us on.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You're standing right next to me, yeah.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. It doesn't sound, well, now I sound loud. I'm good. All right. Excellent. Well, welcome to Alternative Fee Arrangements. So I'm Laura Vaughn, business analyst with Mitra Tech, and with me I have Scott Coletti. And today we're going to talk a little bit about alternative fee arrangements, and really we're not going to do all the talking, we're going to let you do most of it. So we want to have this session to really talk about how you use the product for alternative fee arrangements, what type of alternative fee arrangements that you might possibly have, and also any suggestions or things that you use to make it easier to use alternative fee arrangements. So let me ask a question before we get started. How many people in this room are using eCounsel? Okay, and Team Connect? Okay, so we got a little bit from both groups here, so we definitely want to keep this. Oh, law track, sorry, did I miss a law track? Do I have a law track? Oh, got a law track, okay. That was like an auction or something. Do I have a law track? Give me one law track. So anyway, we'll be talking about alternative fee arrangements, and again, I think it's interesting because everybody kind of sees alternative fee arrangements as different things in their organization, so it all depends on what you actually do in your organization. I have no idea how to use this button. I think I just turned it off. There we go, there's our pictures. So I pulled this definition of alternative fee arrangements. You know, what is it in simple terms? Alternative or special fees are agreements between a law firm and a client to provide compensation to the firm based on a structure other than just base hourly billing. And then according to the ABA, they're not about charging more than what the hourly rate might be. They're about charging an appropriate fee based on the value the client receives and how that client perceives value. And this kind of really blends right in with what I said, that we're going to really be asking you to talk about it because, again, it depends on what you perceive as that value. So what does your company see as the value of an alternative fee arrangement, and why do you go for the alternative fee arrangements? And then again, we'd like to hear what type of alternative fee arrangements that you currently use, and then of course challenges possibly with software, with tracking that against your invoices and validating those rates against your invoices. We're very interested in hearing that. Obviously, this session is going to be recorded, so we're going to try to get a microphone somewhere, and we lost our room aide. So we'll try to get the microphone to you to ask your questions, and we'd like for everybody to be able to hear this later on when you get the recordings back. So.
All right, and I'll just add my 2 cents. I used to say that, and I'm sitting down because I hurt my foot, and I want to stop from standing up on it. So I'm trying not to be rude, but.
It's okay.
Anyway, the alternative fee arrangement is it's like the Sanka of instant coffee, although I'm not sure anyone knows what that is anymore.
I haven't heard that in years.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. But it's a very, very generic term that means something very, very specific to folks. So whenever we hear alternative fee arrangements, and how does your software handle alternative fee arrangements? That's barely the beginning of a question. That doesn't give me any information about what you might want to do. Alternative fee arrangements range from, on a given matter, things are going to be different, to the rate for a certain person is going to be different, to the outcome of the case, to just a million different kinds of things. So the idea is we want to hear a little bit about what you guys think these alternative fee arrangements are. And I'll be honest, I planted a couple people in the audience to help me get the conversation started if need be. But normally we don't have a problem with someone kind of starting up the conversation. Because we're recording the session, even with the microphone, we need to repeat the questions that you guys ask so that it gets recorded. So I just wanted to point that out.
If they have this, they're okay, right?
No. Oh, I thought you said even if they talked in there, I needed to repeat it. No? Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. My bad. I misunderstood. Okay.
It's all right.
So anybody want to start us off on what you're doing with alternative fee arrangements? Oh, I didn't even set you up for it.
This is not the plan. This is working perfectly.
I just sent an email to a law firm. So we have an arrangement where we kind of cap fees on a certain matter type. But there's not really, I haven't really discussed this with Teresa yet too much about like how we can do that in the system. She mentioned maybe setting up a, well, what we've been doing so far is that the law firm bills regular time entries for the work performed. And then it's up to me to kind of go in there every time I receive an invoice, go back to the matter itself and assess how far we are up and if we've, getting close to the cap. Then most recently, we just received the cap sent to us, she just sent one invoice for the total amount, which now we won't be able to see what work is being performed for those services. So we lose that visibility.
Okay.
So we can talk about some, that's a common one, right? That's pretty common. So for this type of matter, we charge you X amount of dollars. So, sort of some of the issues around all that is, how does it get billed, and how do I know if I'm on the plus side or the minus side of the arrangement, and to evaluate it. Am I paying them too much, or you're probably not going to pay them too little because they'll tell you at some point. But if I'm paying them too much, and there are techniques within a leads file or electronic billing that we could kind of shadow bill. In other words, they bill us for the time, and then they take adjustments in that time on all the line items, so that at least I have the data that someone worked 4 hours at $225, and then the $220, whatever the math is there, is backed out on that particular line item, so it's reflective of the amount of work that was done. So that's a way, and then the net bill, of course, is whatever, either zero if it's truly like a shadow bill, for lack of a better term, or you just have one line item that says $15,000. It just depends on how that stuff gets billed. These again require a lot of conversation and discussion, but hopefully that's a pretty, matter type I think is a pretty common one that we have.
I have a comment on that. I'm from United Technologies, and we've been doing alt fees for many years. 86% of our overall spend every year is on some type of an alt fee arrangement. We're pretty creative. We use a lot of things. You're talking about the shadow billing, and while I can appreciate that, and I think for people who are newer to the alt fee scene, that's probably a good starting place, but I feel as though your goal really is to even get away from that. The whole point is, I don't care what you're actually doing at the firm and how much time it's taking you. You mentioned a cap fee. You have $10,000 or whatever you've agreed to. If it takes you $12,000 worth of time, well, that's too bad. Next time around, we'll work it out better. But we tell our firms, we don't want to see the detail now.
Yep.
We want you to be more efficient, get a project manager on the matter, whatever it is. We want one line item that says, the matter is, we agreed to $50,000 a year, and we agreed you'd bill us $5,000 a month. So we want a $5,000 invoice, done. Mm-hmm. There's no extra administrative time spent looking at the detail.
Right. I guess with that, it's a matter of, we talked a little bit about it today in the keynote session, the value you get. If it's worth $50,000 a year for them to do all of these things for you, then it doesn't matter if they spent an hour on it or 5 million hours. It's just, how do you measure that? And a lot of people might still measure that by how much time did you actually put in. But to your point, I totally agree. It's how much value. It's just how do we measure that?
Yeah, and I think that some people go to that type of model after they see the cost for a while and then say, you know what, these are all kind of in this range, so let's throw out 10 grand for this type of matter. We know we're going to lose some, we know we're going to make some, but at the end of the day, we come out even, and we don't have to spend all that administrative time actually managing it. Now, again, if the firm feels they're losing money, they're going to come back and renegotiate the next year. You may not get that same rate, you may not get the same offer of the flat fee, but that's time will tell, obviously.
In our case, we probably don't have the volume that she's talking about, and like so many participating in the flat fee. So my concern was, in this case, the opposite. Like, we opened a matter, they billed us $5,000, say, and then it closed a month later based on maybe a position statement or whatever they wrote. So now I feel like we're overpaying as not, trying to get them to narrow it down, I think in that case we may have overpaid, which would balance itself out, I would understand, if we had more of those arrangements. But without that, we'd want to capture what
Yeah.
works.
Well, and you want to kind of prove it out to yourselves too. Have a comfort level, so you can do one, either or. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Wait, hold on. I'm mad that you hurt your foot, Scott, because I'm
sorry.
having to run around.
Just a follow-up comment on that, from our perspective, I think that another goal in your routine might be to really think about what your business client wants as their outcome. Because if you're clear on that maybe it's, I just want to get out of this before summary judgment, or I want, based on budget, we need this to end before the end of the quarter, whatever it is, and then say to the firm, listen, firm, you need to know how to price your product. I'm looking to you as the expert on whatever the kind of work they do. They should know what it will cost to do a general thing. And even if you don't have repeatable work, like if every case is a little different, I agree, it's harder. But I think over time, you just can learn to make one more step or one more risk-sharing thing with the firm. So we always feel as though it's a risk-sharing situation.
Definitely, I agree. It definitely is a risk to both parties.
Yeah, I think what you said is, it just takes a little bit of time. It takes building up that trust and having enough data really to make those kinds of assessments.
Right, exactly.
I was actually wondering if anyone has any kind of, so that kind of alternative fee arrangement, what you're describing, we can kind of use the software, a piece of data in the software to compare it to see if it's over or not. In other words, I could put a budget in there of whatever you said, $5,000, and then I could add up the invoices and they come up to $5,000 and I can say no, right, when it hits that number. But are there any kind of alternative fee arrangements that you're using that are really outside the software? So one I always hear is, hey, if you have a good result on the case, I'll pay 10% more. Something like that. Oh. And those are, from a software perspective, those are extremely difficult to automate because the bills sometimes come in and are paid before that result is there. I'm just curious if anyone has any experience with that. Do you have experience with that?
Yes, so I'm getting ready to launch eCounsel, so I was excited to sit here. But yes, we have an AFA with our firm for litigation. We've staged it out at fixed fees. We have a 20% collar. Either way, so we still have to do the time and expense tracking to make sure we're staying within those amounts. But yes, if they settle before summary judgment, they get a 10% of whatever's remaining in the phases.
Okay.
So how we get to a point and kind of layer all of this, I want to make sure we build it in.
Which company do you work for?
Energizer.
Oh, okay. I'm Scott Coletti. I think we talked about the iManage thing the other day.
Yes, nice to meet you.
My pleasure. Yeah, that's one of those kinds of things that just falls outside. You still have to pay the bill in the meantime. And sometimes the agreement is if something doesn't happen, they pay you back. Well, you can't really do that up front in the software as it goes. And that makes alternative fee arrangement monitoring in the software extremely difficult. Not to figure it out afterwards during the approval process.
We just had a case with a similar situation, and we had an agreement with the outside counsel that if they got the case dismissed, settled, somehow resolved within 6 months, they would get a bonus based upon their billing. We asked them to discount their fees by 10%, and we would give them a 20% bonus if they really got it resolved. And we don't have the e-billing implemented yet. So we just had the outside counsel at the very end of the case send us a bill for that additional percentage. So instead of trying to backtrack and,
fix something
in the system,
Yeah.
you just have them send an extra bill
Right,
at
but
the
it's
end.
still, that's just an additional bill they send at the end once you agree that they've met that threshold of whatever it is that threshold is, right? Just that they settled it, that's probably pretty easy, but sometimes it's a little more obscure to figure out, what's a good result and what's not a good result.
You have to define that from the start.
Exactly.
We had another case where we parceled out one particular motion in the case and said if you win this, you'll get a bonus for the hours you spent on that motion. And we didn't define it all that well because they got, 4 out of the 5 claims dismissed.
Right.
So they were partially successful.
Yeah.
So we didn't really know how to, give them the bonus for that.
Right, right. But hopefully the application at least gives you the data that you need to make those determinations. But it usually can't do it on the intake of the invoice.
Well, and I think what you mentioned is a really good point. You've got to make sure you know what you're asking for and make sure you define it well, because then it's like, oh dang, I didn't define that one little piece, and now we may have to go ahead and pay the bonus out where we didn't really intend to, or maybe you did intend to. So you're exact. I think that point needs to be something everybody hears, and you have to make sure that you're both in agreement with what you're doing, right? Who else?
We did not hear from my plant yet, so
Ah,
I
yeah.
still have some leeway here.
Ours, most of our M&A invoices are manually keyed in, even if they're using e-billing. The reason is because the attorney, our M&A attorney, wants to be billed after. And once I see the invoice and I say, send it, he always has these, at the beginning of the M&A deal would be 10% if it goes through, bonus and all that stuff. But then if it went longer, it changes. And so instead of having them bill us, it will be manually keyed in our system. So that's always a challenge, especially now in our company. We've had how many M&A deals in the last year? And it's always over $500,000 because it takes about a year. They don't bill
Yeah.
us every month.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting.
are you keying in line item detail?
No.
Oh, thank goodness.
We just
Okay.
put the discount, so just the amount, but we lose the information, the line item details.
Yeah, you lose that.
And so when they want to.
Give her the microphone, Laura. Microphone.
Whoa, oh.
So if they want to see the line item report, the face codes, task codes, I can't give them that. It's because I have to manually key in the invoice, because it really depends on the discounts and whatever they discussed after the M&A deal.
And it seems like almost you could have them go ahead and submit once maybe the negotiations were done and the adjustments. You could have them go ahead and send that leads file with the corrections and pull it in. That way at least you get the detail. So I'm curious, because everybody talks about AFAs and the different ones everybody comes up with, and I can't remember who it was, and I think it was Lisa Grimscheid. I don't see her in here, but she was in last year's sessions, and they have tons and tons and tons of different types of alternative fee arrangements. And I'm curious how you manage those. So do you allow each attorney to set up their own alternative fee arrangements? So do you just let them have a conversation and go crazy? Or do you have like certain guidelines that say only, typically rates are negotiated through some single source, or hopefully they are, right? But when it comes to alternative fees, are you just letting them go, or do you have somebody that manages that? So how many let the attorneys do their own AFAs? Okay, so the rest of you, you have a process? Does somebody have a good process we want to talk about on how you do that? Got something? Okay.
We have a bit of a mix. We have 350 in-house lawyers, and we have, so many approved firms, and our lawyers can engage the firms directly. And the lawyers, the in-house lawyers, are actually rated on their ability to get an alt fee, and we report on that. So they're incentivized to work with the firms to get alt fees. So we do let them go at it. We, twice a year, we hold an AFA seminar, myself and my supervisor, who's the vice president of litigation, and he's our most knowledgeable AFA guy. He has plenty of years' experience as a partner with the firm and so on. So we let our lawyers do it, but we have resources for them. I speak to lawyers on a daily basis, helping them through them. We also have alt fees that are for portfolios of work, so the in-house lawyers don't have to negotiate anything. So one quick example is we have a law firm that handles all of our employment matters, and for single plaintiff employment cases in every state except California, because California does stuff differently, we have one set fee for all of those. So our lawyers just know if that's the kind of case you have, you hire this firm. There's a whole big process in place. California, we have the same thing, only it's a higher dollar amount we pay for California cases. And then if a single plaintiff employment case moves outside the scope of the general portfolio, we renegotiate. In fact, that's already already negotiated. If it does this, we'll give you this much more, and so on.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I've heard that before, because you can't always say it's going to be a cookie cutter, right? Somebody takes a flat fee because it's a typical type case that they've done over and over and over, but you never know when you're going to hit that smoking gun, and it's going to become a nightmare, and they're going to have to come back. So I think that's reasonable. Sue? Oh, I'll get you next.
Can I ask a question? I'm from California. So what is the range that you would pay for a flat fee for an employment case?
I don't know what the range is in California, but in the other states, it's about $5,000.
A month? $5,000 a month to handle the whole case, no matter what? That's pretty cool.
So Sue, you asked what the going rate was
Yeah.
in California for an employment case? And she said 5,000?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when you, it's 5,000 a month or 5,000 a case?
It's 5,000 per case for single plaintiff employment cases in most all other states.
All right, so it's cradle to grave $5,000, not 5,000 a month.
Look, we have large portfolios of cases, so we're able to get really good deals.
Right, and true, if you've got the volume.
Their firms, you know,
Sure.
Yeah, no. No, well, and you're right. The more volume, it's just like going to Costco or Sam's Club. I can get toilet paper cheaper if I buy it in a huge volume, right? And if I'm willing to do that and I have a place to store it, great.
Really? Is that where you wanted to go with this?
I went for toilet paper, yes I did. Okay, Isabella, go ahead.
So in our case, we have a new engagement with a preferred vendor who's handling certain financial transactions for us. And just recently, one of the lead lawyers with that firm, a relationship partner, negotiated an arrangement when we pay a certain amount of money for simple review, then there is a rate for complex review, and then there are, I think, 4 other types of financial transactions. So that's per case, and I think that's the fee per month. And in our particular system, it gets a little bit complicated because we're just starting with AFAs and everything is hourly based. And we track rack rates and discounted rates. So we try to get more and more AFAs going, and then at the same time we're trying to make sure that we, getting a good deal in comparison to using more standard or more traditional methods of billing. So we do use shadow invoices. We ask the law firms to submit zero net invoices so we can run average hourly rate and see if we're making a good deal. So probably in time, the more AFAs we are using, we probably will go the route of maybe going away from shadow invoices. But right now, we need to closely monitor how we're doing.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
Now, Isabella, don't you guys have in its simplest term, it's an AFA, but you're tracking the difference between the rack rate and the discounted rate that you receive on everything? Yes. On everything. Yes. So it's a pretty massive undertaking, and then they use that data presumably just to see, hey, before we even start anything, this is the amount of savings that we had from our tool or from our negotiations. Am I saying that all right? Did I mess anything up? Yes. I did?
Yes. You're saying it right, but in general, so this is all based on hourly billing. So we go through the process of negotiating rates every 2 years at the moment with our law firms. So we're starting off of their full standard, non-discounted rate, the highest rate they can charge. And then they give us a set percent. We're going down to the effective rates. We load 2 sets of rates into our system. And we have a certain mechanism built into our implementation. Before invoice even can come into our system, I think there is a first validation, making sure that they're charging us the rack rates, the ones that they gave us, and we entered into our system. And then once the invoice makes it to our tool, there is also a second set of validation that checks that the discount they applied on each line item in their invoices, meaning on each timekeeper, takes it down to the effective discounted rate that we negotiated, approved, and entered into our system. If this is not working, the invoice gets auto-rejected.
Right.
So it's kind of like still hourly rate billing arrangement, but we are taking steps to make sure that we are getting the discounts that we negotiated.
Yeah, so it doesn't come in unless it's discounted,
Correct.
basically is what that means. And we can
Correct.
tell and do math to check on that, the way we built their system.
Right, so I mean, AFAs right now still are posing a little bit of difficulty, and it takes creative thinking, because if it's a fixed fee invoice, sometimes it covers many months of work, and we have another set of rules that will only allow invoice covering 1 month, one
Right.
matter 1 month. So we have to work with each law firm every time there is AFA in place to advise them how they should submit their invoices, how to structure leads files. And they still have to go by our rack discount per line item, full effective rate, and then they use IF line items
Right.
to take it down to the agreed cap. It makes it a little bit difficult if it's a flat fee. What if they do less work than less hours? If they spend less hours than what we agreed to pay them every month. So every single AFAs right now, it's a challenge. We have to talk and figure it out and come up with a way to allow the law firms to submit those AFAs.
Yep.
And actually, we also are thinking about marking each matter right on the base info. We use eCounsel to indicate if it's AFA matter or not. We don't have timekeepers per matter. We have timekeepers per law firm, and those timekeepers, meaning a law firm can help us on a variety of matters, and we don't track it per matter.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And this is, I think, for maybe you guys are Team Connect users. We use Team Connect. And these arrangements can be obviously very beneficial, but how do you track them like in Team Connect? There's no little window that says, you know, year billed to date or billed year to date is X. It's just such a convoluted process to track a lot of these fee arrangements because you don't know where you're at unless you're running a report, then you have to export it to Excel because it doesn't total it for you at the bottom. You know, so how are you guys that use Team Connect? How do you track these fee arrangements?
Anybody? So I got a Team Connect user here that can help out with that one, how you do it today.
So I can tell you how I think we do it today. And I'll file it under, you know, it's the Sanka of instant coffee. We need to understand each one. And then we need to do configurations on the system to be able to enforce those alternate fee arrangements. So whether it's, I don't think it matters which system we're talking about, assuming it has the configuration capabilities that I'm talking about. But we basically have to build a little thing in there for, and when I say we, it's the communal we, not necessarily us. Oh, of course, of course. You know, we've done alternate fee arrangements just in general for our company. We've done alternate fee arrangements that are tiered. It's a firm tier, so it has nothing to do with a matter. It has to do with, hey, if I pay you more than $1 million this year, I'm getting 5%.
Yeah.
Well, we need to build a little something on the entity record so that I can track, and then it totals in, and then when it gets to 10%, it does its thing, and then when it gets to $1 million, it does its thing, and then so on. It has to be built. There's nothing like out of the box. We built something for a different client. They had a task-based alternate fee arrangement for intellectual property. So based on the UTBMS task code, they said for whatever it is, PA 110, whatever they are, I'm going to pay you guys $75. That's it. So I needed a place to go in and put in that the $75 fee. So we built a little screen on the entity record, and it has a little drop down of the task. But it was unique. I'd never heard that particular arrangement before by UTBMS task code, because that's a lot of work. But they wanted it, so I had to build it.
Well, yeah, for intellectual property, right, that kind of makes sense, filing fees or things like that, $35 invoices over and over and over and over or whatever, so it totally makes sense.
Yeah, but it just,
Yeah.
you know, it's not something that we have out of the box.
Yeah.
It's something that we always have to talk about. Of course, if we come across something that we're hearing over and over and over and over, like, for example, alternate rate on a particular matter, that's a very common alternate fee arrangement. So normally Joe gets $5.50 an hour, but on this matter, he gets $4.50 an hour. We have that built in to some of our applications. Now, I don't know if it's Team Connect or eCounsel or Law Manager or
LawTrack.
But if we do see it, we do build it in.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, I think we need to look at them and figure out what configurations we need to do. But even something simple as they're just adding them up. Isabella, were you going to say something about that adding up
I've got the mic
thing?
here.
Well, I know for us, we use eCounsel, but what I typically do as far as the AFAs that I have in the system, we do shadow bill. And so with that, the firms, what I create is like a dummy timekeeper ID. So every invoice, when they back out those fees on the invoice, of the shadow invoice, they use that timekeeper. So it allows me to run reports on those specific AFA timekeeper bills that have that timekeeper associated to them. So that way I can track, okay, these are the bills where we had a fee agreement in place. So it's an easy report that's built out of Analysis Center, but at the same time, I did have questions regarding how are other people tracking the results of those fee agreements at the end of the case. So once the case is over, is there anyone who is doing any kind of reporting that shows you or tells you quickly, did we benefit from this fee agreement? You know, how much did we spend versus how much we would have spent, which I can do that on the shadow billing. But is there an easier way? Is there something that someone else is doing that may be a little bit easier to run or easier to create as far as the results at the end of those cases?
Anybody? Isabella?
So for those few AFAs that we have, I usually create additional timekeeper record. So I have attorney A, meaning his timekeeper ID has A at the end, and this is how I know that this is a AFA type of a rate, meaning it's usually set rate for all the timekeepers on the matter, and we run a report, and then it's easy to point out which are those A timekeepers, meaning they are charging on AFA basis. And I compare that rate, AFA rate, with the standard rate for the same timekeeper that I have.
Oh, certainly.
We are also thinking about adding custom task codes and letting our law firms use that if they bill us for a flat fee, a fixed fee, capped fee. So I think right now we have 3 that we are planning to use in the future, so that possibly could help us track it better in the reporting.
You know how I feel about custom task codes, right?
Oh, the same way I do, Scott. It's not good. It's not good. But sometimes sometimes I think you just have to do it to get what you need to get done.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it and appreciate it. We're not a fan of it just because we feel it kind of muddies things up and how many do you add and do that kind of stuff. So from an implementation standpoint, we always shy away from it. But at the end of the day, if you need it, you need it.
Well, the thing is
one way
with
to
any
get
of
done.
those custom task codes, and I don't know, I'd love to hear if anyone's actually using them, but if you're going to use a custom UTBMS task code, first of all, the U in UTBMS stands for universal. So suddenly the U is not universal. And then you take on the responsibility of managing not only every firm to use the code in the right way. I guess it's every firm, but all the timekeepers that are working on your matters, they need to understand, hey, I need to use, this this code. So it becomes a
Right.
lot of management on your side to
So-
make sure that they're using the correct
Yeah,
code.
not just the guy I negotiated it with, but all the people that work with him and stuff. Now, I will tell you, I believe Sue at 2:30 is doing a thing on outside counsel billing guidelines, which kind of ties into this a little bit, because I think it's very important that you're able to put this down in black and white. So once again, you can pass it along. It does make it more difficult, I believe, but at least those can help out. So join Sue's session at 2:30 if you want to talk about the billing guidelines. Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I wanted to ask a question about the system. Scott, you mentioned, you can change somebody's rate from one matter to the next. What about, we have some matters where our outside counsel have agreed to bill us 50% discount just for their travel time in the case. So is there a way to flag that? I want to see the actual travel time, so I don't want to see them bill 2 hours if they really traveled 4. Is there a way to just tag their rate for that time?
I think the issue that we have is there's really no UTBMS task code for travel. Now, I'm not talking about the expense code, because there is an expense code for travel, but there's no UTBMS, those letters, task code that's associated with travel. The issue, Sue, is how do I figure out that this particular line item was travel? That's the issue that I have. There's no universal task code for travel. Not in the tasks. There is in expenses, but that's more for the money that you spend on the flight that you take
Cost
to.
me $1,000 for the flight. It took me 4 hours to take it, so you're wanting to see the 4 hours.
I want to see the exact number of hours they actually spent, but I want to be charged half price.
Right. So the way they would do something like that, assuming we had a good way to figure it out, is they would submit 4 hours at $400 an hour, and then they would do a credit on the end of minus 200 or
Right.
whatever
Take
the
half
math
off, yeah.
is,
Just take
so
half
that so that there'd be an adjustment on the line item to see that line item came in as half of the value.
Right,
But
right.
you'd still have to sort of, you could always figure out if that, by doing the math, whether it was 2 hours or not.
Yeah, you still have
The
to
issue
figure
we're going to have, Sue, I don't have a code for it.
Right, I started saying, do you used to come back to the code? Then you can just make one up.
So all of our applications will allow you to make one up. It's just, all I'm saying is that you're going to have to rely on you guys training the firms to say, in the instance where you're billing me travel, you use this made-up code. That's not part of the UTBMS phase and task codes documented anywhere in the world.
Right, and since
So
they're
that
working for...
becomes, if you have 3 firms, it's not a big deal. If you have 300 firms or 800 firms, it's a very big deal.
Well, even if you have 300 firms or however many you have, they have many clients. So they have to adjust their normal workflow for you. And so you've got to expect that you're going to have some issues and some misses, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you never use a custom task code. I'm saying that my default position is you have to convince me that you really need one.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. This could be a very, a reason to do it. I just don't know.
Right.
We have to think about it.
Yeah, and keep it, don't go crazy with them. Keep them as common as possible. So you definitely don't want to create 50 of them and try to manage all these different things with it. You should try to stay within the task code set that they have, because it takes them less time to do. You're going to pay for it in the end, right?
Yeah.
It takes them a little more time to figure it out. You're going to pay for that little time to figure it out.
A lot of times, Sue, we're shackled by the way leads works and the UTBMS task codes that we have to try to make some of this stuff work, and it's difficult. It's difficult because it's a huge, a large number of people that need to be involved in the process to get it right.
We're still using most people are still using the phase task set that was ratified in what? I don't know, 1990 something.
I was in high school. I don't know.
It was in 90 something. You were?
No.
I'm calling that.
Yeah, I gave myself away on that, didn't
I was in
I?
elementary school at that time. Yeah. So the new task code set, which has been ratified since 2000 something, is that it? Trying to think. The X codes, when do those get ratified?
Oh, the expense codes, not task codes, expense codes.
No, the X, the phase and task, the X, the newer, well, they may be X for expense, but I mean the whole set. There's a whole new set that has a whole bunch of different new values, and nobody's really even using that yet, right? So I'm just pointing that out, that they're slow to adopt, right? I don't know if that particular set has better codes or more codes, but it's slow to adopt because everybody's been doing it for so many years, and unfortunately there's not a match for those two sets, so it makes it really difficult. So has anybody using the new phase and task codes? You are?
I know they just created a new code set for mergers and acquisitions.
They did.
That we were just aware of, some months ago, maybe? And so we ended up having to create a custom code specifically because the new code set didn't contain this specific task that the outside counsel needed to use to bill. So in order for us to be able to get the invoices in, we had to end up creating a new task code just for that code set so that they could bill us. And I didn't even know we could do that, but, because I'm with the universal, it should be uniform. But, so that's how I found out that we could actually, create a new task code if we need to. But yeah, so I was aware of the new mergers and acquisitions, but I did not know that there was a whole new code set.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, they've mapped them over and they've done some, and again, I don't know anybody that's using it right now, but.
And the process for ratification through the Congress there is extremely long. So you may hear about codes today that don't get ratified and approved for 4 years. I mean, the patent and trademark codes are fairly new. Patent and trademark.
Right, which have been around forever and ever,
Yeah,
right?
so I think they came around in like 2010 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
But we're kind of shackled by that, we kind of don't want you to do some things, but then,
Well-
if you have to do it, you have to do it. It's just,
And the reason you don't want to do it is because you need to have that comparison ability, right? So how do I know I'm doing a good job if I can't compare firm A to firm B to firm C? If everybody's using different stuff and they're all using different types of codes for different types of things, you couldn't compare. And so that's why you have the set, and that's why it's important. So let's go back to AFAs. Anything else that anybody's using? Any comments on how we can support those better, possibly? I know that we can most likely support those better, and I think it'd be a great subject for a client-led discussion with our development team or something like that. Is anybody using anything fancy inside of Team Connect? I hadn't heard much from that group. Do you have issues? Does it work the same way we're talking about when the eCounsel users, and I'm not sure who's who. I know some of these are eCounsel users, but I'm not sure of who everybody is. But is there something you do that maybe would benefit the other group?
This is more of a question of an issue that
Michelle.
I think we have.
Is she your plant?
she's right up front. I thought it was obvious. No, I'm just kidding.
We have some retainers, and $20,000 a month, and our attorneys want to see the detail, so the firms put in all the detail. And if they didn't make the 20, they just add a line item that adds it. But if they go over, then they just deduct it. But they deduct it as a discount. And we don't want to see it as a discount. We want to see it as an adjustment, because we also track discounts in our system to make sure that the firms are giving us, the percentage discounts on fees that we negotiated. So these invoices come in with, say they spent $25,000 or racked up $25,000 in fees. How do we get them to show that as an adjustment?
It's just a leads technique. Leads has even Leads 98B has on the line, on each line, there's an adjustment column. What they're doing is putting it in an IF line item, so you have one line that shows a discount. Tell them not to do that. You don't want those adjustments reflected as an IF line. Like, IF is a thing.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's a technique that Leads uses to identify a discount for a fee. There's also an IE, which is for expenses.
So they just include a line item with
no, the line item
regular
includes,
line item.
a regular old line item includes the location for an adjustment.
Okay.
So they're just putting it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's what you're on, I think that's what it should be.
Yeah.
An IF line item is supposed to be a discount on an invoice, 10% off.
Right.
Not because that's not a percentage. I went over the amount. So per your agreement, we're adjusting that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, hold on, I'll be right back to you, Isabella. I've got one in the back here.
It's just a comment for the young lady that just spoke. For us, they do the same thing. Sometimes they'll put it in as a discount, and it's clearly not a discount. I just reject the invoice, and that'll get them to bill it properly.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately,
That's right. I like that.
that is what I think you have to do, or at least call them up and say, hey, next time you submit it this way, I'm going to reject it. So, sometimes, you know, as league administrators, we want to have we want to reject stuff, but sometimes the attorneys don't actually want that because there's relationships and yada yada. But it just, you know, I'll leave it to you guys about how to handle it. But you do need to challenge them.
So my question is, if it's me, hi. So my question is, if the law firm is putting it in the IF line item incorrectly, right? So I understand that they're including additional IF line item. How can they do this on one line item as an adjustment? Doesn't that line item have to have details such as timekeeper,
It does.
units?
There's a field. There's a column in the leads file for an
Right.
adjustment. So in addition to, because if you look at it, you know, you get nauseous when you open up that little
Yes,
leads.
I've opened many, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So one of the columns in there is the adjustment.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But then if this is a big adjustment, like for the month worth of work, and they can only charge us, for example, $10,000, I have to have a line item that is larger than $10,000 to take that $10,000 off. Do you see what
Well,
I'm
if it's
saying?
larger than 10,000, isn't it a credit, or they're just going back to zero? I don't understand.
No, because, you know, maybe I'm just blinded by the fact how we are getting our invoices per timekeepers, and there is a discount, meaning it's an adjustment on each line item, right?
Your discount? It shouldn't be. Well, your discount has to be, right? Yours
Yes.
is, right, because you guys are monitoring
Per
on
line
each
item.
line. So,
Okay.
yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yours is going to be a little bit different because
Okay.
of the way we're handling line
Okay.
item adjustments.
So.
Or
in our-
discounts.
In our particular case, if my firm had a retainer and, you know, it's capped at $20,000 a month, I would have to have a line item which is greater than that's $20,000. So I have something to take off the adjustment from on that one line item if
Yeah.
I'm not using IF. You understand?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay. So for us, it would be more even difficult because we're getting multi-line item
It
invoices,
is.
and
It's a little bit more difficult.
Well,
on every single item, the adjustment is in essence, IF. It's a fee discount.
Well, that's kind of skews your ability to even track what they would have billed without that. So if you take it off the line item, and let's just say the bill's for $30,000 and your cap's 20, right? And they adjust down to where they get to 20,000, then it's kind of skewing because some things bill through at the rate because I'm getting up to that 20, while the other ones are zeroed out because of the discount. So I'm not sure it gives you a good comparison tool. I think you'd need to have a line item for both items, right? So they would take the line items down to, in my opinion, they would discount each line item and then just charge you the 20,000. Then at least you could see, it's like a shadow invoice.
Right.
It's just like a shadow invoice would be, right?
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated, that's right.
And for the record, I think I said UTBMS was universal. It's uniform, not universal.
Oh.
In case someone's like, you know,
I'm glad you corrected
gonna
yourself,
check
Scott.
me. I wanted to make sure.
Because I would
was
have come back later and
I know
overcorrected
you had it in your mind.
You know, what is that on that wiki page? Is that Leeds or is that UTBMS?
Yeah, it's UTBMS.
So Scott keeps up the wiki page for UTBMS. I just learned that myself this year. I was
Yeah, thanks for telling everybody.
I was kind of shocked because I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, who wrote this? This is crazy. And then he goes, oh, it's me.
Now, I don't know if there's anything wrong on it. Someone could have changed it. I'm just saying.
I know when I learned that about wiki, I was like, what? People can just put their own stuff? I thought
Yeah,
it was
you
like
know
fact.
you could update any wiki page
Yeah,
you want
you can
pretty
update
much.
any wiki
so.
page. I didn't realize that until, anyway. I digress. So what else do we want to talk about? Anything else about AFAs? Anything that you guys do that you think's unique?
Yeah, we got about 10 more minutes.
Okay. Nothing?
So. Oh, come on.
Come on, surely. So I guess, so for the most part, are most of your AFAs, I mean, we've heard a couple of different options for AFAs, right? A couple of things that people do a little bit differently to try to track data to obviously support their business model. So we want to show the rack rate and then the discount rate and all that good stuff. I forgot what I was going to say. Totally lost it. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I'll throw out a couple more,
Okay,
that I've seen throughout the years. One that I saw fairly recently was the client wanted they did a lot of contract, they outsourced the contract reviews that they did, and they indicated whether a contract was, they thought small, medium, or large, I guess, in terms of what the effort would be. So when the matter type was contract review, they had to go in and select a particular, how complicated was this thing, and then we built a little table on the entity to say, if it's this matter type and it's hard, they get $50, right. And if it's, or easy, they get $50. If it's this matter type and it's medium, they get 75. Right. And those are tables to whoever asked about, how do we do all of this stuff? Where's the magic wand? There is none. You have to really dig into the details for a lot of it. And I wish it was not Sanka, but it really is. And it's funny because we get approached by a lot of salespeople and say, oh, well, they want to use AFAs. And we're like, oh my gosh.
What's that mean?
Yeah, what is that? What are you talking about? So we always need to get into the nitty gritty details to figure out
we
if
can
you're...
define it, we just can't really define it. We can put words to it, but we can't say what you want to do. And everybody does it differently. Like I said, I know that Lisa had 15 different things they did, and it was all over the board. If yours is fairly common and structured and repeatable, then you can probably build something in the product to accommodate it and check and balance.
Well, even in here, we kind of heard that, that I want the shadow invoice details because that's how I can figure out if I won or lost, and some people don't.
Yeah.
So, everything is a little bit different, even from our talk in the room.
All right. Any other questions? Anything anybody wants to bring up? No? All right then. Well, thank you very much. I think it's about time for lunch, so enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you at the yacht party this evening.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.